Want to thank National Parents Union for having us do our show today. Today is Monday, July 27th. Just to give you a little background about us, since we're a brand new show, and can you tell that we're from Texas? The great state of Texas. Again, my name is Wendy Gonzalez-Neal. I am the Texas advisor for the National Parents Union, and I'm also the executive director and founder of My Child, My Voice, a nonprofit organization here in Houston, Texas.
And again, I am Shea Mackin. I am the Texas lead parent director for the National Coalition for Public School Options with the Texas chapter, as well as a national board member for the national board. And I'm also in Texas. I have 4 boys, and we are going to talk a little bit about education today. I have utilized education in a couple of ways. How about you, Wendy?
I have, since I have 4 kids who are now adults, and I have 2 grandkids and a lot of nieces and nephews who are still currently in the school system. So I have utilized it in so many different ways here in Houston. And so we're going to talk about some like buzzwords that everybody has been kind of going around and hearing, mostly from your kid's school, or maybe in some Facebook groups or from friends of yours that are talking about this, and some of them you're like, wait, can you repeat that word? Because I've never heard of this word. And so we're going to talk a little bit about that, since now schools are going to be reopening soon, and this is a big, talk right now. Well, for us in Houston, we've been ordered to, our judge has actually ordered that our schools do not reopen until September 8th. I don't know about you, Shea, if Austin's actually have something similar.
So what most of the schools around Central Texas are, some of them are starting now. I know of at least one school that started today. A lot of them are starting about mid-August, but they are all 100% virtual at this point. Most of them until after Labor Day at this point. So.
Yeah, and so that's going to be the big discussion. So we wanted to bring this and connect with parents just like us to talk about these words to kind of help you when you're trying to figure out what to do with this school year or possibly looking for a school. So I am going to first take off my hat.
We'll get serious now.
Yeah. And first of all, we're going to warn you now that we go out of script and we just tend to say what's on our minds. So we're just going to, just forewarning everybody right now. So I'm going to share our, well, looky there, there's a little, our show. Hold on a sec. There we go. All righty. Well, we've already introduced ourselves. Oh, but those are cute pictures, don't you think?
Yeah, I know. Well, and we are 2 moms. I forgot to say I've got 4 boys myself. I've got 2 adults. One that is 17 and a half. He is also done with school. And then I've got one going into 4th grade. And I myself have used different types of schooling throughout all of my kids' schooling. We have done homeschooling. We have used brick and mortar charter schools, as well as full-time online schools for all of our students. So we've kind of gone across the gamut. And then Wendy and I have both volunteered and worked at the Capitol, helping people to understand their options, right, in this state. And so that's how we kind of know what some of these buzzwords are, is we've been doing this a little while within the education realm as parents and helping other parents advocate and understand their options for their kids. So that's kind of how we know what these words are. We've been learning them along the way over the last couple decades.
Yeah, there's no dictionary, or there's no, Texas Education Agency doesn't have anything there for us to like, okay, you need to know these words, or it's something that we picked up either from our kids' school. My kids actually, my 3 oldest kids went to a traditional public school, whereas my youngest child went to a public charter school. And so this is how I was able to see the difference of the different types of schools. But as a mom, didn't know that I had several different options that I could do. So this is where I picked up a lot of things. And I feel like parents, all parents should know, a lot of information. And actually we do, to be honest, when we're at parent meetings or however we're talking and telling each other things. And so this is how I picked up a lot of, different words. And so we're going to talk about one particular one that Shea introduced me to, which I was, as I'm introducing buzzwords, is momsplaining. And I'm like, wait, hold horses here. Momsplaining. That is a word I have not heard. So I was like, explain.
So that's just it. It's moms explaining, because that's exactly what we are. We are moms, and we have been going through this education, jungle with our own kids, and learn things along the way. And when I'm talking with other moms, I'm momsplaining. As a mom, this is how we understand what these words or these things mean to a mom, to a parent, and for their child that happens to be a student. Yep. So we're gonna momsplain today.
And to be honest, I had to ask Siri, hope she doesn't come on. Like, what was the definition of that? And then it's like, oh, that's true. We all do that as parents. We explain things to each other and we go to each other for help. So let's dive into some words that I know I have been hearing lately, especially like distance learning and remote learning. And these two words are pretty much the same. They mean that, when students and teachers are not physically present at their traditional classroom at their school, this is where both a teacher and a student rely on technology or their packets. Got to rephrase that. They have packets because we had a lot of schools that did packets. That are given to do at the comfort of their home. And so that's what remote learning. Now schools will call them different things. I've heard them say distance learning, remote learning. I've heard, virtual learning. Now virtual learning is different than virtual school. So let's be clear on that part. So that is a difference. But just to kind of give you an idea, that's what the distance learning, it is the school working with the student and providing that, information of, the school, the work that they do together.
Right. And some schools have been doing this for a while for instance, like their kids that had illnesses or something happened where they couldn't be there for a little bit of a time or maybe an extended time. Some schools have been doing a little bit of distance learning for the kind of that one-on-one kid, but they weren't really as much working with their regular teacher. Maybe they had a distance learning specific learning advisor or a process where they were distance learning a few years ago. But distance learning or remote learning really came, to the spotlight, and we've all been hearing this since this last spring because of the pandemic, for sure.
Right. Well, the pandemic that gave us a whole new norm in education. So that kind of gives you an idea. And I think everybody pretty much learned these words pretty quick, but I know there was confusion because I know in some of these mom groups that I was in, they were calling it homeschooling. And it's like, that is a totally different thing to hear. But at the same time, it's good that, schools can actually describe hey, this is what we mean by this. And sometimes they don't. And so that's why we talk amongst ourselves and we explain that to you. I think another, words are hybrid and blended learning, which is combines face-to-face instructions. Now, you've probably been hearing this a lot, especially with schools talking about reopening, and they're talking about, okay, we're going to do this blended learning or we're going to do this hybrid learning. You're like, okay, wait a minute. I first had to figure out remote learning and all this. Now you're telling me hybrid and blended learning. What does that mean? And so it's meaning it combines face-to-face instruction with online learning. It reduces the number of students in a building, and some of these also it is delivered through online. So it's like a little bit of both of a model itself, blended learning and hybrid. And like I said, most parents are probably hearing this right now from schools, because schools are asking parents, what would you like to do?
Right, right. And I heard actually more of this kind of at the end of the spring, beginning of the summer, when they were trying to figure out how to do this. Now, my kids actually were able to do a hybrid school years ago, now over a decade ago in California. They were part of a public charter where they would be home with me as their learning coach Monday, Wednesday, Friday. Not using computers. It was using more packets, textbooks, things like that. And we would do lesson 1 at home, and then they would go to school and do lesson 2 in math or whatever it was, right? And then lesson 3 at home, lesson 4, and back and forth. Most of the testing happened on the days that they were at school, right? And so what that enabled the teacher to be able to do was on, say, Monday, they didn't have any students in the class. So they were able to do their prep work and get ready for their week on Monday because all of their students were home. Then they would have half of their students on Tuesday, the next half on Wednesday, and then back and forth, so my kids went Tuesday, Thursday, other kids went on Wednesday, Friday, and then the other learning happened at home. But again, they were held accountable, had to turn in their worksheets to their teacher. I was not their teacher. It was a public charter school. And so it has been happening in some places, and that's where they are kind of getting that idea. I know in some parts of the country, they are still looking into doing this. A lot of charters, especially, how do I not put all, 30 kids in the classroom with the teacher? When we go away from distance learning, right? And okay, they're letting us have kids back in the class. How do we, space them out 6 feet apart, because they were right on top of each other before. So we do have them still, some of these districts, these charters, looking at possibly doing hybrid. And so that's what that would look like, is for blended or hybrid, is going part-time, face-to-face, in person, and part-time, either learning online with your teacher or another format, or with packets or things like that. But it should still, kind of go lesson 1, lesson 2, lesson 3, and follow along for the most part.
Yeah, that's very true. I mean, this type of model, I think, is a good model. And I mean, I know it'll be challenging for some parents who work full time, who are going to say, how am I going to do this? How am I going to be able to still, help make sure my kid is on track, and make sure that, I gotta go and make a living, right? And so these are things that schools are trying to work around, especially with this new norm of this, pandemic cooties that's going on, is what we call it.
Yeah. I was able to, one thing that helped our family is I was able to work on the days when they went to school, and on the weekends when my husband was home. So because we had 2 people at home to be able to kind of cover that helped us financially to be able to do that. So that actually helped, instead of having them home, all 5 days, and then I'd have to figure out a different job. The job at that time I couldn't have done from home. So
that's very true. I mean, that's the whole thing, it's like this new norm. Parents trying to figure it out. I know we were trying to figure that out even with our 3-year-old granddaughter. It's like, one, it's how do I keep a 3-year-old occupied? And it's like, oh, okay. So it's just trying to knowing all these different options, and then trying to figure out how to do these options, And I think another words that we're going to bring up, which I've been hearing so much about, it's been a big rave right now in different conversations, is all of these different types of pods and micro schools that are being created around, our nation. And, this has been in an uproar. And so let's talk a little bit about what these, pods are.
Yeah. So learning pods, the way I look at them, again, this is coming from me and my understanding of what I'm seeing, right? who I'm talking to, the Facebook groups I'm on, watching the news, watching other people in the education realm, and who they're talking to, right? So what I'm seeing learning pods popping up is mostly for the families who are still going to be doing their school down the street, their traditional school. I'm still going to be using whatever elementary or whatever middle school down the street, but right for the first 3 weeks, 6 weeks, there will be distance learning. Well, I've got to go to work, or I don't even know how to explain this packet to them, right? Mm-hmm. So what parents are doing is getting in groups. Their apartment complex, it's parents within that apartment complex. Their HOA or their neighborhood is getting together. Their church group is getting together. Their friend group is getting together. And either taking turns helping those students, stay on task, or everybody at work. I've heard of one where they're all bringing their kids in and they're going to put them in the conference room, and that's going to be the school room. And everybody's going to take turns. They're going to take turns during work, going, making sure they're on task, right? But then what that does is if there's a breakout, right, of COVID, then it's kept at a smaller group, instead of in, a group of 30 kids. But it still allows those students to learn. Some of these pods, they are hiring teachers, right? Yeah. Or tutors to come in. So some of them are creating almost like a micro school or a mini school, where it's like a one-room schoolhouse where you've got this family, they've got kids of different grade levels, and the teacher, they're paying a teacher or a tutor to come in either to someone's house or to the workplace and help educate and keep those kids on track, right? Some of them I'm seeing, like what we already have, so many after school programs that have popped up over the last, especially decade, where it's tutoring programs or, karate after school, gymnastics after school. And these organizations are trying to help you out by giving you a location, and they are either bringing in experts or just at least just giving a place. I've got to go to work. I can't leave my 5-year-old at home. Right. So I'm going to go drop them off at where they normally take karate, right? And somebody is hired to make sure that kid is logging in if there's live instruction from their teacher, or making sure they're getting through their packet or their online, learning, whatever that looks like. So this is really, I think, something a lot of people could take advantage of. I have another friend who was talking about doing this, and I thought it was super clever. I myself probably could not afford to pay a teacher, right, come in, or even a tutor. I couldn't afford to take them down the street, where they're doing these micro schools or learning pods. But I could take a turn. I could, okay, everybody, you're going to come to my house Monday. And maybe I'm not even really teaching them, right? Because they do have a teacher through the traditional school. I'm just facilitating, making sure they're logging in, they're doing what they need to do. I'm making peanut butter and jelly sandwiches for lunch, making sure they're hydrated, whatever it is. And then Wendy, you might take Tuesday, right? And so then we each take a day. Or I heard one mom say, I don't feel comfortable even facilitating the learning. I have a really hard time just with my kids. And I have to work every day. Like, I can't take a day. Right. So I'm willing to make dinner for that family. Whoever, if they're at my house, she's gonna be making dinner for my family on the day that they're at my house, and making dinner for you, your family, on the day they're at your house, And so people are being really creative about these learning pods and how to make them work. What in the world am I going to do with these children during distance learning time when I have to work, or I just still don't really know what to do with them? So this is, I think, very clever, very clever. And the way to kind of find those is start asking. Almost every town is having these pop-ups somewhere. Or ask your girlfriends, ask if you're, ask your dad friends.
Hey, find out even on Facebook.
Yeah, find it on Facebook. Hey, I heard this word, these learning pods. What are you going to do? Oh, you're going to do virtual schooling. Okay, that's what I'm going to do too. Or even we have to because the school's not opening in person. How about we get together and figure out a schedule? And it may not be a set schedule for the next 6 weeks because maybe you work in a place where your schedule changes every week. And
Right.
so every week you have to switch it up. Okay, let's figure this out this week. Let's figure this out this week. Or even, high school students. I've heard of high school students coming in and watching the younger ones and getting paid, kind of babysitting hours. That's a lot cheaper. But that high school student has to be able to do their school too. So there's lots of innovation coming about from this pandemic for sure.
Yeah, this is a great way for everybody. Like you were mentioning, the high schoolers can actually be, chipping in. Because I mean, I heard like varsity tutors were helping, college students that were tutoring other students.
Yeah.
So these learning pods, or we call education pods, are just popping up so much. I hear this everywhere now, no matter where I'm going. And I think it is a great way that families are coming together to help each other during this pandemic to, one, make sure that our kids are being educated, and one, that we're working together as a group to do this.
Right.
And it is so true. You can find them anywhere, whether it be a mom's group, it could be something that even next door, I even found it at our next door app.
Yeah, on the application on your phone. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, any way you do your search for, because a lot of people say, well, how do I find these, local ones in my community? Well, I mean, start wherever you can start, whether it be, your app that you constantly use, a mom's group, or your next door app, or, you can find them you'd be amazed how many people post these, different types of groups because they're wanting more and more people to join so that they can kind of, help each other out. And I think
or you are the one who initiates it.
Yeah.
You're the one who gets it going for your, your Sunday school group. It's like, hey, what are you doing? You don't know? I don't know either. How about we figure this out together, and help each other out where your kids maybe already know each other. And again, they don't necessarily have to be the same grade level. For years and years, we had one-room schoolhouses where they're learning all sorts of different things. And the nice thing is if they're still doing their traditional school, their teachers are providing the curriculum and some or all of the instruction, right?
Right.
So you're not having to do that portion. And that doesn't mean this is a forever fix, right? This isn't, you're going to have to do this forever, hopefully. I mean, but you may find that works for your family. It's like, man,
yeah,
this really worked for our family. One mom was telling me, yeah, we're looking at doing this. And if this works, we may keep doing it because
it creates a micro school.
Right. Yeah.
It is true. I mean, I think this is where it has a lot of people that are against what we call education choice, because this is a choice that helps families on how they help each other, and that it creates like a micro school. And these are choices that are coming up that a lot of parents are seriously looking at that direction for the fact of how they're seeing the results with their kids, right?
Right.
Compared to when they were at a brick and mortar traditional school, and now they're seeing them more up close, they're seeing that difference.
Right. Yeah, for sure.
And I think the next one I'm going to leave up to you, because this was words that I recently learned.
So as we were planning for this and we're going, okay, what are these buzzwords? And I said, well, synchronous and asynchronous, Wendy. And she said, what?
I was like, hold your horses, explain that. I mean, to be honest, I would like to ask anybody who's watching right now that's like, have you ever heard of these two words, asynchronous and synchronous? I'm like, I've been to Austin, I don't know how many times, and I've come across and I've talked to school leaders, I'm connected with them. I just never heard of this until Shea was talking to me, and it's like, repeat what you said, because I have no idea what that means.
Well, and so I was reading some stuff from the Texas Education Association about some of their recommendations to school districts for reopening, and they use these words. And I literally had to Google it. I said, I know I've heard it before.
Be like, there.
But what does that mean? It's been filed away and I couldn't bring it up. So thank you, Google. But then once I read it, I remembered, oh yes, I totally know these words. And my children have used these words.
Oh,
these things.
really?
Yes, for sure. So synchronous is like you're in the classroom with your teacher.
Mm.
The teacher says, okay, everybody, open up to page 72. And today we're learning about ecosystems, right? And so everybody all together synchronously at the same time in sync, right? So that's where that comes from, in sync, not the band. That shows you our age.
It's like,
but at the same time, we're all learning about ecosystems together, and maybe Amy's taking a turn reading a paragraph, and then Juan is taking a turn reading a paragraph, whatever it is, right?
right.
All together synchronously at the same time we are doing this, okay? So most of the time in your traditional school down the street, kids are synchronously learning.
And you said you hear this mostly from the Texas Education Agency, or do your kids were saying it, and then you're saying like the schools are saying it, right?
The word synchronous or what they're doing?
The word synchronous.
Oh, the word synchronous. It was, I think I heard about this like 2 decades ago, probably when I was looking into different kinds of education and touring different schools, and they would talk about their synchronous learning and asynchronous learning. And then, and I was like, what? I'm a mom. I don't know what that means.
Can you speak my language? Because I have no clue what you're saying. It's like...
But when I was talking about like, when my kids went to that school where they would be home 3 days a week and then in class 2 days a week. So those 2 days a week when they were with their teacher, pretty much most of the day they were synchronously learning, right?
It makes sense.
But then when they were home, they were asynchronous or not in sync learning. They're probably learning the same topic, but maybe my kids did math first thing and reading in the afternoon, and your kids did reading first and math in the afternoon. Now they're all learning the same topics for the day, but
right.
they aren't necessarily doing it at the same time, right? So this last spring, some of the districts were really great about having some synchronous learning, right? They were able to get tablets or things to their students to be able to virtually do this distance learning, and synchronously or at the same time, everybody in that class would log in via Zoom or other portals, and the teacher would talk about the lesson of the day, right? But mostly it was asynchronous learning that was happening this last spring.
Right.
They would be given an assignment for the day, and then they'd go forth and do it. Not with the teacher live sitting there where I could raise my hand and ask a question, right? I'd have to email and then wait for a response. Same thing if you had like packets given to you, that's what your school provided, was you would drive up and get a packet. That was more asynchronous learning, not live where you can raise your hand and get an answer right away from your teacher. So that's how I look at synchronous and asynchronous learning. And that's a big thing they're trying to figure out right now. You know, every type of schooling, private, charter, traditional, how it's easier to give them asynchronous learning.
Right.
Make an assignment and say, okay, you know, Jose, here's your assignment for the week, go forth and do it. It's harder if you don't have the right portals and the right mechanism for the teachers to utilize to do synchronous instruction and synchronous learning with your students, especially if you don't have, you know, one-on-one tablets or, you know, internet for your students, all those kinds of things. That synchronous learning is not going to happen as much for those students. And that is a lot harder. You know, your kids with your learning disabilities, you know, the kids who are in that upper percentile of the class, they do pretty okay with asynchronous learning.
Mm-hmm.
It's your kids in the middle and the ones that are struggling for whatever reason that is, that have a harder time with asynchronous, not at the same time, not with a teacher where you can raise your hand.
Right.
Learning. And so that's going to be the struggle again this fall, is how do these students get in touch with the teacher for help? And so that's going to be a big question to ask, right? What is the synchronous learning? Use their verbiage.
Yeah,
And
it's great to come back at them with their own words.
exactly. So if you can say synchronous and asynchronous when you're talking to your parent, you know, your kid's teacher or the school board or, you know, the principal, whoever you're talking to, and you're saying, okay, how much of the instruction is synchronous and how were they teaching via, you know, synchronously with my child live, and how much asynchronous, and if they have an issue during asynchronous learning, how do they get a hold of the teacher and find the answers?
Right. How are they going to get the support when they're asynchronous?
They will listen to you a lot more, honestly, if you use big words, which is sad. They'll go, oh, they get a little scared of you because they go, oh, you know a little bit. And I could get a little bit more in trouble, maybe. Not that we're trying to get them in trouble, but we want you to advocate for the best education and get the answers you need for your child, right?
Right.
So that's that synchronous and asynchronous crazy words.
I mean, that's the key. I mean, keep educating yourself is always what I tell parents. You know, when, you know, a teacher or, you know, your child's principal or leader comes to you and talks to you and you don't understand these words, it's like, you know, hold up. First of all, you know, what do you mean by this? You know, and there's nothing wrong asking these questions, right? Because it pertains to your child's education. So you have to ask those questions. But it's great when you start learning them and then you throw it right back at them and then they just look at you like, oh, well, okay, we're going to do this. And then that's when you can actually come in and intervene. Well, you know, this past spring, when my kid was doing, you know, when we were doing all of this, this is what I found and this is what I saw. You know, telling them, you know, you have a voice as a parent and you got to communicate with your child's school and tell them what you're seeing and what you're not seeing. And those are the questions, when you bring up these questions, that's when you back that up. And that's how you are a powerful parent, by saying that. You are advocating for your own child. So by having these conversations and telling them these types of having these types of conversation is what is helping your child at the end of the day.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Sorry, I just keep going about advocating because, I mean, I was once in that shoe where parents, you know, were, you know, school leaders would talk to me and, or even when I worked for a school district, they would say words and I'm sitting there going, what are they talking about? I have no clue, you know, especially when they have, you know, parent meetings at the school and we're sitting in the back trying to figure out, you know, did you get what they were saying? And we're trying to figure out. And then literally I had to raise my hand and say, pause, let's go back what you said and let's talk about this.
Yeah.
So these are great.
My child. Yeah.
Yeah, these are great words to know and then to bring back to, you know, your child's school. And I think the next one is what Shea is really an expert, I mean, about a decade now. And so I'll let her describe more about virtual school and online school.
Sure. So I heard lots of people say, ugh, I don't like virtual schooling this last spring because doing distance learning was new to them. And I had to raise my hand and go, okay, hold on. What you're doing is distance learning through your traditional school or, you know, pandemic crisis schooling. Virtual schooling has been around for over 2 decades. There are educational providers who have been partnering with both parents and with school districts and schools to provide virtual schooling for over 2 decades. Now, I started a little bit over a decade ago. One of the first families in the state of Texas, there was only about 300 families utilizing virtual school in Texas. Now, virtual school can be a couple different things. The main thing, a big thing that it is in our country, there's a little bit, I'm trying to remember, at least 36 states or so that allow public virtual school. So just like the school down the street, you go, you put your kid in, 4th grade, and they have a teacher and curriculum, and they get tested and all that stuff through the school. This is the same thing in a different package. It is still public school. It is still free to you because it is paid for by taxes, just like the school down the street.
Yeah,
the teachers teach from their home to your home. So a lot of people confuse it with homeschooling. Oh, I'm homeschooling now. Actually, you're not. We'll talk about homeschooling a little bit later. You are online schooling or public virtual schooling. And I always try and make sure that public word is in there if it is through the public portal or through a school. There are a few states still that don't offer this, public virtual school, but for the most part, most of them do. And in different varied forms, which we're going to get to all these different kinds of schools on different meetings that we're going to talk about.
We're going to get more into that.
We're going to dive in. But so virtual schools, again, is just a different packaging where instead of sitting at a desk in a classroom with 30 other kids, the 30 kids in that class are sitting at their kitchen table in their own individual homes. And they are also doing synchronous and asynchronous learning, right? Synchronously, there's a lot more because these groups, these organizations, these providers who have been doing it for over 2 decades, they know their stuff. This is not something new to them, right? So they're not using Zoom. That's not the portal they're using. They're using really advanced technology where, a little bit of background, my older 3 have all utilized full-time virtual school in the state of Texas. And they would have, different times where they would go live synchronously, and they would all be in class with all of their classmates with their teacher. And everybody can be broken up into groups and work on projects. They all can write on the blackboard, essentially, right? They can all work together. The teacher can see if they're engaged, if they're not engaged, right? These schools, because you're at home, but this is, a state school, public school, there are certain textbooks and curriculum things that are needed, right? So they'll send you boxes of stuff, of textbooks and literature books and microscopes. And for high schoolers that are taking chemistry, chemicals to do, chemistry experiments live with your teacher. It is so interesting. And the interesting thing that I'm seeing is both of my 2 oldest kids have been now, they're in their 20s. They've been graduated a little while from online school, and they are currently both using college 100% online. And for them, there was no learning curve, really. They knew how already to learn virtually because it was just that type of packaging that they understood. And
that's really important because I know a lot of students struggle from when they graduate high school transitioning to college, when they do choose to go to college, is that online, platform where they struggle on how to do that because nobody really taught them how to manage their day with something like that.
Right. And some schools, a lot of them aren't 100% virtual. A lot of them, there's a percentage or 1 class or 2 classes that are online, have that online component. And people for the last, 2 decades have been utilizing full-time public virtual schools for a myriad of reasons, whether they didn't feel safe in their school, they had health issues, social issues, whatever that was. And again, we're going to do a whole hour just on this. This Thursday, we're going to be talking about virtual and online public school, what that looks like. What does a day look like for that student? What does that packaging look like? What is the synchronous learning? What is the asynchronous learning? So again, these are public schools for the most part. There are some options out there for private or for homeschoolers, you know, to utilize some virtual components, like bits and pieces, or a full virtual, you know, school that they're paying for, right? But again, this is public, paid for by taxes. So when you hear virtual or online school, that's usually, or should be, if they're using the word correctly, that really is for the public mostly.
So it's a public school, but are they truly, I know you say they partner with, you know, traditional schools, but are they public charter schools, or are they, I think that's where the confusion, where people ask, like with these virtual schools, because I know, you know, I was recently learning on some schools that popped up that I never heard of, and I found out they were public charter schools.
Right, right.
So are you seeing that's what these?
Mostly, for the most part, these are public charter schools. Okay. Some schools, like an ISD, could have just a virtual component for their kids that fall behind, their kids that are excelling, their kids that are pregnant, their kids that are sick. You know, so we have some ISDs around the country that have a whole subset of their school population within their own ISD that are using virtual public school. There are some schools that are statewide. Like in our state, we've got, you know, multiple schools, which we'll talk about on Thursday,
right?
That are statewide, that are through like one ISD, but their student body are from all over the state, which is really interesting.
Yeah, I can't wait to talk about that conversation. So let's move on to some other words. I know that was a hot topic.
That was a hot one.
But this is also your favorite topics.
So again, I've schooled my kids in different packaging for different reasons, right? Depending on where our family was at, each individual kid for different reasons. And I've homeschooled over the years, over the last 2 decades at different times. I'm currently homeschooling my youngest one because that's the only option in our state that he can do. He has a health issue where he cannot be in a classroom. And so that is it. That's my only option for my youngest.
And you're not the only one. I know there's a lot of parents that are going through that right now, whether it was, you know, health issues or it was bullying in their you know, neighborhood schools, that they all switched to another school option, which is homeschooling.
Right, right. And so homeschooling, again, is not public virtual school at home, because you are still a public school student enrolled in a state school and held to the state accountability standards of whatever that state is by their state testing, right? Now, when I'm homeschooling, so I'm homeschooling my youngest one, I am the teacher. I have to figure out the curriculum. I have to figure out, okay, what are they supposed to learn this year? And how am I going to go about getting my kid from A to Z during the school year? Some states for homeschooling, you know, there's some hoops you have to jump through. You have to apply to become a homeschool. You have to show them your curriculum. There are certain subjects that you have to teach. Some states, you're giving by homeschooling, the state can come in and check on your family at any time and see how they're doing on the wellness of that child. Some of them, you have to test your child every spring if you're homeschooling. And so it's worth, if you're thinking, okay, I'm going to homeschool, you need to figure out, what does homeschooling look like in your state? In Texas, it's one of the most homeschooling friendly states. There are not really hoops to jump through. So my child, the youngest one, was in a brick and mortar school his kindergarten year. And that's when we found out he had these health issues. And so when I went at the end of the school year, the pediatrician's like, you can't have him in a school like this. This can be very bad. And so you need to figure something else out. And so I went to unenroll him, you know, and they said, well, where are you going? Where's he going? And I said, we're homeschooling. And a lot of times they'll say, oh, you can't do that. And you can. Homeschooling is legal. You just have to figure out how in your state that's legal. In our state, all I had to do, because the state already knew about my child because he'd been in the public school, right?
Mm-hmm.
I had to let them know that's what I was doing.
So you had to notify them, like, hey.
I had to notify them so
But
that
you
I
also
did not get in trouble for him being truant, right, come first grade.
Right.
Or if I'd pulled him out mid-year and started homeschooling. But other than that, at least for the state of Texas, I can teach whatever I want. They don't come in and test my kid, nothing. But it also means I don't get any state funding. And there are
You
states
get no support.
no support. I have to, you know, that is why really I work, is to pay for the extracurricular and the curriculum and things like that to then homeschool my child.
Right.
Because it does cost money. I don't get that state support. In other states, when you say you're homeschooling, they will give you like stipends or certain amounts of money to spend, or you can do extracurriculars like sign your kid up for gymnastics or tutoring or guitar, different things.
Yeah, some states actually have like choice programs like education savings accounts or tax credit scholarships where parents can utilize that for their homeschooling to help them to homeschool with the resources and tools they need to do that. So
right.
In the state of Texas, we don't have any of that.
Nope. Nope. And some parents honestly moved here because of that, because they're like, okay, we don't want the state involved at all. And right. So some parents move here for that. But there are parents who are like, man, that'd be really nice if I could get some of my tax money to use towards the schooling. Or
and that's with the co-ops that you mentioned before that can kind of.
So yeah, that can help. So co-ops, I've been involved in different co-ops over the last 2 decades. I'm telling you all my age by saying that.
That's okay. I say the same thing, or I mention something and it's like, oh, I just said my age.
And so a co-op, for the most part, is within the homeschooling realm.
Right.
What will happen is this bunch of, you know, parents that are homeschooling will get together and, okay, you know what? I'm not really good at science, or let's do some hands-on stuff. So that we're all going to get together and do hands-on science experiments together, or history, or art. It's more the hands-on kind of stuff, not so much, okay, we're going to sit down and do workbooks. And a lot of it is play dates, or park days, or hiking together, or nature exploration. So it's a lot of parents either taking turns being in charge and kind of running the group, mm-hmm. right? Or, and maybe with your strength, right? Maybe you're a history major from college. So it's like, I'm going to really delve in and we're going to like mummify a chicken. I did that in the co-op. That was
mummify a chicken. That's it.
Yeah. We learned all about Egypt and history and mummifying, and then we mummified a chicken. Really cool. And here's my youngest peeking.
Oh, I see him.
During our, I did. It was dead already. I love
it. You got his attention.
That was with his older brother, so I guess we need to mummify a chicken this year.
Now you got him curious, like, okay, this is going to be one we're going to have to do. This is what I love about it. So what is the difference with the co-op and then the learning pods? They sound very similar.
They are very similar. For the most part, if you're homeschooling, and again, these are generalizations, for the most part. If you're homeschooling, again, this is on you. Your kid is not enrolled in a public school, right? You're homeschooling, you're the teacher, the principal, the admin, you know, the janitor.
Superintendent.
And for the most part, with most co-ops that I've seen in various states, is the majority of schooling you're doing on your own as the parent at home. And then once, twice a week, maybe once a month, maybe once a quarter, you're getting together with other parents, other families to do these co-ops. So it's the socialization with, an educational twist. We're all going to the art museum, something like that, and talking about art together. Where the learning pods, for the most part, are all day long, right? And it could be, what I'm seeing mostly is people trying to figure out what to do with the kids while this pandemic is still going on. Their kids are still enrolled in a traditional school. They are not homeschooling where it's all on them, and you're Googling what does a third grader learn in the state of Texas, right?
Mm-hmm.
And in homeschooling, you can buy complete curriculums, which is really nice. You can go, okay, third grade, and you find one online and you say click and it ships to your house, and they got history, math, science, literature, everything. A lot of homeschoolers over the years are kind of more eclectic, where they're like, I'm going to get a little bit of this, and I like this over here. But some people are choosing, okay, you know what? We're pulling our kids completely out this year, and we're homeschooling just for this one school year. What do I do? I've never done it before. I would say get a curriculum in a box where you're not having to go and, piecemeal from different things. Just go get the third grade in a box from somebody, and then you're teaching for that. So okay, next year we're going to put them back once there's a vaccine or whatever it is your family's looking to do to make you feel safe.
Mm-hmm.
You know that they got through third grade because you did everything in that box. Right. But you're just completely pulling them out. You are letting them know I'm homeschooling for this one school year. Or then maybe you figure out that it worked better for your child,
And do you feel like since you homeschool your kids, do you feel like the socialization was still there?
So I totally do. The interesting thing that I found, when my kids were in the regular brick and mortar schools, their socialization was with kids all their own age.
Right.
Where when they're homeschooling, whether we're in co-ops or we're volunteering somewhere, or, we're in scouts, that's my background. That's the other thing I do. I volunteer with scouts. And so right now scouts is all virtual. So here's my background for my scout classes that I run. They don't have an issue talking with somebody 5 years younger than them, 10 years older than them, because they've learned how to socialize with people all different ages. So it's almost like a more real socialization. When you're done with high school or college and you go into a workplace, not everybody's your same age, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
I'm gonna stop sharing. Sorry.
Oh, that's okay. I was like, we moved.
I moved you. I just like a squirrel moment.
So yes, now it takes a lot more work on the parents' part. It's getting them involved in clubs, or looking when's the museum free homeschool day or homeschool day at a cheaper rate, to get them out and with other kids of varied ages or just their age.
Right.
And so it can be very tiring, because you're trying to figure out, what do I teach? And then you're teaching, and then you're trying to make sure they're socialized and not just at home only looking at you.
Or mummified chicken.
Or in a mummified chicken. But I need to go and write down on my list of things to do for science and history this year.
I think this is a great discussion, because I know, all of these decision makers that are talking about, that are going against all these school options that we've been talking about right now. And this is not all of them. This is some of them, especially homeschooling and virtual online schools. They're saying that there's no socialization. And it's like, you're actually a good example, that your kids
We're out and about. Yes.
Yeah. And they've transitioned well going into college, and, I think it just up to a parent to figure out, what's not only best for, our kids, but also what can I do, on my end, what can, or what can I not do?
Right.
And there's so many different options. And see, I'm learning as I'm going as well, because a lot of these options were not available, or to be honest, I didn't know.
Right.
Because it's like, nobody really sat with me, because to be honest, our Texas Education Agency doesn't have a lot of information, like when you do research. They have some, I can't say they don't have none, but they have some. I call their website like a endless labyrinth, because you'll get lost in it. And then I feel more comfortable talking to a parent like you that can just tell me like, oh, you've been through this. So I'll have a lot of these questions to talk about. And I think it's great when we talk amongst each other, tell this is what we've gone through and this is how it is when you either homeschool or you decide to do a co-op, program within your community or so forth. So I think this is a great conversation to bring up. And I know if anybody else has questions like this, or any of these words that we brought up, feel free to reach out to us. I mean, I think this is a great conversation for us. If you have a question you want to bring up or a topic you would love for us to bring up, we're happy to bring that up too. We're just talking about what's been the craze right now. Right?
Yeah. Yeah. What are we hearing? What is the bazillion, Facebook messages and phone calls I'm getting going? Okay, what is this?
Yeah, because we're learning as well, but let's learn together. We're parents too. I'm a grandmother and a parent, but still, we are all learning together, especially with this pandemic hootie that's going on right now and in our new norm with education. So let's figure this out. Reach out to us, talk to us. And we love to welcome any parent that would love to come on the show and just, talk about a conversation they want to talk about on a topic, or maybe, particular things that they're hearing from their school or other parents in their community. And we would love to talk to you to get more guidance, to, deep dive into it, or even to talk about mummified chickens.
Yeah, I can tell you how.
I'm sorry, that's the word for the day.
I thought it was mom-splaining, but So how do they reach out to us and ask us questions or get a hold of us, Wendy?
So a great way to get a hold of us is you can reach me, Wendy, at mpuunion.org. You can email me and I'm happy to, answer your questions, or if you'd like to come on our show, just go ahead and reach out to me. Or if you have specific questions in regards to the Houston area, where you have questions in regards to schools, or, hey, what's the topic that they're talking about? Happy to reach out to me and I can help you with that. And Shea, since you are a good expert on different homeschooling virtual schools, how do parents get in touch with you?
Sure. So my email is Shea, SHEA, at Public School Options. And I'm willing to talk to anybody, not just, about virtual schooling or things, the type of schoolings that I've utilized, but I've been trying to educate myself to help, the thousands and millions of kids all over the country to find what works for them. And if that's in your traditional setting at your school down the street, to make sure you're getting or your child is getting the education that they need at this time.
Yeah, I mean, any questions you have, or like I said, we invite any parents to come on our show. Feel free to reach out to, talk to us. I guess I should spell my name because Wendy is spelled differently for everybody. So that's Wendy, Wendy, at mpuunion.org. And I want to thank National Parents Union for allowing us to host this show to connect with parents. And we hope that you can join us this coming Thursday as we deep dive into virtual schools, and we'll talk a little bit more in Texas, how to find them, what to do, so forth. And I hope you join us again. Thanks for watching.
And